Katrina, where do you think you're going with that suitcase? Linda's shrill voice pierced the air, making me flinch as I reached for the front door handle. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation I'd been dreading. I'm leaving, Linda. I can't do this anymore. The living room fell silent, save for the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. I could feel Alex's eyes boring into my back, but I refused to turn around. My hand trembled on the doorknob as I waited for the inevitable explosion. Leaving? Linda scoffed. After everything we've done for you? You ungrateful little dash. That's enough, Mom, Alex interjected, his voice tired and resigned. I heard him shift on the couch, the leather creaking beneath him. Katrina, can we talk about this? Finally, I turned to face them. Linda stood with her arms crossed, her face a mask of righteous indignation. Alex looked lost, his eyes darting between his mother and me as if searching for a lifeline. There's nothing left to talk about, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I've been trying to talk to you both for months, but neither of you listen. Linda rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, here we go again with the pity party. You've had it so hard, haven't you? Living in our beautiful home, eating our food, spending our money dash. Your money. I couldn't hold back the bitter laugh that escaped my lips. Do you have any idea how much I've contributed to this household? How many hours I've worked? How much of my own savings I've poured into keeping us afloat? Alex stood up, his brow furrowed. What are you talking about, Katrina? You work from home. You barely leave the house. I shook my head, fighting back tears of frustration. Just because you don't see me in an office doesn't mean I'm not working. I've been pulling 60-hour weeks for the past year, trying to make up for the income we lost when you got laid off. Linda snorted derisively. Oh, please. We all know you spend your days watching soap operas and gossiping on the phone. That's not true, and you know it. I snapped, my patience finally wearing thin. I've been killing myself trying to keep this family together, and all I get in return is criticism and accusations. Alex took a step towards me, his expression a mix of confusion and dawning realization. Katrina, why didn't you say something? I tried, Alex. So many times. But you were always too busy, too stressed, or too caught up in your mother's version of events to listen. Linda's face reddened with anger. How dare you blame my son for your failures? If you were half the wife he deserves dash. Stop it, Mom, Alex said sharply, surprising us both. He turned to me, his eyes pleading. Katrina, please. Don't go. We can figure this out. For a moment, I wavered. The look on Alex's face reminded me of the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who used to stand up for me, who valued my opinions and contributions. But then I glanced at Linda, saw the triumph in her eyes as she sensed my hesitation, and I knew nothing had really changed. I'm sorry, Alex, I said softly, reaching for the door handle once more. But I can't live like this anymore. I deserve better than to be treated like a freeloader in my own home. As I stepped out into the crisp autumn air, I heard Linda's voice rise in indignation once more. Alex, are you just going to let her walk out like this? After everything your father did for her? I froze, my hand still on the door. What are you talking about? I asked, turning back to face them one last time. Linda's eyes glittered with malice as she delivered the final blow. Oh, you didn't know? Dear old Daniel left you a little something in his will. Isn't that convenient? The world seemed to tilt on its axis as I processed her words. Daniel, my kind-hearted father-in-law who had passed away just months ago, had left me an inheritance? But why? And why was I only hearing about this now? As the door swung shut behind me, I realized that my departure was just the beginning. There were secrets lurking beneath the surface of this family, and I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. I collapsed onto the lumpy motel bed, my mind reeling from the day's events. The cheap floral comforter scratched against my skin, a stark reminder of how far I'd fallen. Just yesterday I was in my own home. Now I was a refugee in a roadside motel, with nothing but a suitcase and a head full of questions. My phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand. Alex's name flashed across the screen, accompanied by a string of missed calls and text messages. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the last words Linda had hurled at me before I left. "Daniel left you something in his will." The words echoed in my mind, stirring up a whirlwind of emotions. Grief for the kind man who had been more of a father to me than my own. Confusion about why he would leave me anything. And a gnawing sense of dread about what this revelation might mean for my already fragile relationship with Alex and Linda. A knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Alex standing there, looking disheveled and distraught. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "What are you doing here, Alex?" He pushed past me into the room, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "Katrina, we need to talk. This whole situation, it's gotten out of hand." I crossed my arms, steeling myself. "Now you want to talk?" After months of ignoring me, Alex sank onto the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumping. "I know I've been distant. Work has been challenging. But I had no idea you were struggling so much with Mom and the finances." "That's because you never asked," I said, my voice sharp with hurt. "You were too busy trying to please your mother to notice what was happening right in front of you." He flinched at my words. "That's not fair. I was trying to keep the peace. By letting her walk all over me?" I interrupted. "By dismissing my concerns every time I tried to talk to you about our money problems?" Alex's face clouded with confusion. "What money problems? Mom said we were fine." I laughed bitterly. "Of course she did. Did you ever actually look at our bank statements? Or did you just take her word for it?" His silence was answer enough. I shook my head, disappointment settling like a weight in my chest. "Do you know how many nights I stayed up, crunching numbers, trying to figure out how to make ends meet? All while you and Linda acted like everything was perfect." I had no idea," Alex stammered. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried." I exploded, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "I tried so many times, Alex. But you always had an excuse. You were too tired, too stressed, too busy. And when I did manage to bring it up, you'd brush it off, telling me not to worry." Alex stood up, reaching for me. "Katrina, I'm sorry. I should have listened. We can fix this. Come home, and we'll figure it out together." I stepped back out of his reach. "It's not that simple. This isn't just about money. It's about trust, respect, and partnership. All the things our marriage has been lacking for years." His face fell, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of the man I'd fallen in love with. But then his expression hardened. "Is this about what Mom said? About Dad's will?" I tensed, sensing the conversation was about to take a dangerous turn. "What about it?" Alex's eyes narrowed. "Did you know? Is that why you were so attentive to him in those last months?" The accusation hit me like a slap. "How dare you?" I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. "I loved your father. He was kind to me when the rest of you treated me like an outsider. I had no idea about any inheritance. Then why would he leave you anything?" Alex demanded. "It doesn't make sense." I threw my hands up in exasperation. "I don't know, Alex. Maybe because he saw how hard I was working to keep this family afloat, while you and your mother buried your heads in the sand." The silence that followed was deafening. Alex stared at me, a mix of hurt and anger in his eyes. Finally, he turned towards the door. "I think I should go." As he reached for the handle, I called out, "Alex, wait." He paused, looking back at me with a glimmer of hope. But I steeled myself against it. "I want to see the will. All of it. I deserve to know the truth." He nodded stiffly. "I'll have the lawyer send you a copy." And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone with more questions than answers and a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning of a long and painful battle. The next morning, I woke to the harsh buzz of my phone alarm. My eyes felt gritty from a night of fitful sleep, but I had work to do. I couldn't afford to let my personal life interfere with my job, especially now. I set up my laptop on the rickety motel desk and dove into my work, grateful for the distraction. Hours passed in a blur of spreadsheets and client calls. It wasn't until my stomach growled loudly that I realized I'd worked straight through lunch. Just as I was contemplating a trip to the vending machine, my phone rang. It was Alex. I hesitated before answering. "Hello. Katrina, we need to talk about our finances," Alex said without preamble. "I've been looking at our accounts and it's bad. Really bad. How did this happen?" I closed my eyes, fighting back a wave of frustration. "I've been trying to tell you this for months, Alex. Our savings are depleted, we're behind on bills, and your mother's investments have only made things worse." "But Mom said dash. Your mother doesn't know everything," I snapped. "Or maybe she does and she's been lying to you. Either way, we're in trouble." There was a long pause before Alex spoke again. I think we should meet with a financial advisor. Together. Can you come home so we can discuss this?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to jump at the chance to finally address our money problems. But another part, the part that remembered years of being ignored and dismissed, held me back. "I don't think that's a good idea right now, Alex," I said slowly. "I need some space to think. But I agree we need professional help. Why don't you set up an appointment and I'll meet you there?" Alex sighed heavily. "Fine. I'll call around and let you know." After we hung up, I tried to focus on work again, but my mind kept drifting to our financial situation. How had things gotten so out of hand? And more importantly, how had Alex remained so oblivious? Later that afternoon, as I was finishing up a project, there was a knock at my door. Thinking it might be the motel staff, I opened it without checking. I froze when I saw Linda standing there, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "Well," she said, pushing past me into the room. "I hope you're happy now. You've got Alex questioning everything, digging through our personal finances like some kind of detective." I crossed my arms, steeling myself. "Good. It's about time he started paying attention to what's really going on." Linda's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done covering for you, Linda," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm done pretending everything's fine when we're drowning in debt. I'm done watching you manipulate Alex and waste what little money we have left." "How dare you?" Linda sputtered. "After everything we've done for you, dash. What exactly have you done for me?" I interrupted. "Besides criticize my every move, undermine my marriage, and nearly bankrupt us with your harebrained investment schemes?" Linda's face turned an alarming shade of red. "You ungrateful little dash." She stopped abruptly, her eyes landing on my open laptop. "What's this?" Before I could stop her, she'd crossed to the desk and was peering at my screen. "You're working? All this time you've been working." "Of course I've been working," I said, exasperated. "I've told you and Alex countless times that I have a job. A good job that's been keeping us afloat, while you've been bleeding us dry." Linda spun to face me, her expression a mix of shock and something else. Was it guilt? But Alex said. "Alex doesn't know," I said quietly. "Because neither of you ever bothered to ask or listen when I tried to tell you." For a moment, Linda seemed at a loss for words. Then her face hardened once more. "This doesn't change anything. You're still the one who's tearing this family apart." As she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, I sank onto the bed, my hands shaking. I'd finally stood up to Linda, said all the things I'd been holding back for years. But instead of feeling triumphant, I just felt hollow. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Financial advisor appointment set for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Will you be there?" I stared at the message, my mind racing. This meeting could change everything. It could force Alex to see the truth about our situation, about his mother's influence. But it could also be the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. With a deep breath, I typed my reply, "I'll be there." I arrived at the financial advisor's office 15 minutes early, my stomach in knots. As I sat in the waiting room, I couldn't help but replay the events of the past few days in my mind. The confrontations with Alex and Linda, the revelations about our dire financial situation, and the looming question of Daniel's all swirled together in a dizzying mix of anxiety and determination. The door opened and Alex walked in. He looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and his usually crisp shirt wrinkled. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. Vulnerable, uncertain, and in need of support. But then his gaze hardened, and he sat down across from me without a word. The financial advisor, a no-nonsense woman named Ms. Patel, ushered us into her office. As we settled into our seats, she fixed us with a stern look. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I've reviewed your financial documents, and I must say, I'm deeply concerned. Your situation is far more precarious than I initially thought." Alex shifted uncomfortably. "How bad is it?" Ms. Patel pulled out a stack of papers. "You're on the brink of bankruptcy. Your savings are depleted. You've maxed out multiple credit cards, and you're behind on your mortgage payments. But what's most alarming are these series of high-risk investments made over the past year. They've resulted in significant losses." I watched as the color drained from Alex's face. "That can't be right," he mumbled. "Mom said those investments were solid." Ms. Patel raised an eyebrow. "Your mother is making investment decisions for you? She's been helping us manage our finances," Alex explained weakly. I couldn't hold back any longer. "No, Alex. She's been mismanaging our finances. I've been trying to tell you this for months." Ms. Patel looked between us, her expression grave. "Mrs. Thompson, were you aware of these investments?" "No," I said firmly. "I've been completely shut out of all financial decisions. I've been working overtime just to keep us afloat, but every time I tried to discuss our money problems with Alex or Linda, I was dismissed or ignored." Alex's head snapped up. "That's not true. You never said anything." "I said plenty," I retorted, years of frustration bubbling to the surface. "But you were too busy listening to your mother to hear me. Do you have any idea how hard I've been working? How many sleepless nights I've spent trying to figure out how to pay our bills?" Ms. Patel held up a hand. "Please, let's focus on the matter at hand. Your financial situation is critical. Without immediate action, you're looking at foreclosure and potentially bankruptcy within the next few months." The reality of our situation hit me like a physical blow. All those years of hard work, of sacrifice, and for what? To end up broke and broken? "What can we do?" Alex asked, his voice small. Ms. Patel outlined a strict austerity plan. Selling assets, cutting all non-essential expenses, and potentially downsizing our home. As she spoke, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. I'd been living in crisis mode for so long, always trying to keep us above water. Now that everything was out in the open, I felt oddly liberated. "There's one more thing," I said, interrupting Ms. Patel's explanation. "Alex's father recently passed away, and apparently, he left me something in his will. We don't know the details yet, but it might affect our financial situation." Alex's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "Why would you bring that up now?" "Because it's relevant," I said calmly. "And because I'm done hiding things or pretending everything's okay when it's not. We need complete transparency if we're going to fix this mess." Ms. Patel nodded approvingly. "Mrs. Thompson is right. Full disclosure is crucial at this point." As we left the office, the weight of our situation hung heavy between us. Alex turned to me, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. "What are we going to do, Katrina?" I took a deep breath, the decision I'd been wrestling with for days suddenly crystal clear. "I don't know what you're going to do, Alex, but I know what I need to do. I'm filing for divorce." The shock on his face was almost comical. "What? Katrina, you can't be serious. We need to stick together now more than ever." I shook my head, feeling lighter than I had in years. "No, Alex. I need to protect myself. I've spent too long trying to save a sinking ship. It's time I started looking out for my own future." As I walked away, leaving Alex standing stunned on the sidewalk, I felt a surge of determination. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hope for my future. A future that was finally my own. The day of Daniel's funeral dawned gray and somber, matching my mood perfectly. I stood in front of the mirror in my rented apartment, adjusting my black dress and wondering how I'd gotten to this point. Just a few months ago, I was sitting by Daniel's bedside, holding his hand as he fought against the cancer that was slowly claiming him. Now, I was preparing to say goodbye to the only person in Alex's family who had ever truly understood me. As I arrived at the church, I could feel the weight of disapproving stares. News of my decision to file for divorce had spread quickly, and it seemed I was now cast as the villain in this family drama. Linda stood at the entrance, greeting mourners with a brittle smile that vanished the moment she saw me. "I'm surprised you had the nerve to show up," she hissed as I passed. I met her gaze steadily. "I'm here to honor Daniel, Linda. Nothing more." Inside, I found a seat near the back, away from Alex and the rest of the family. As the service began, I let my mind wander to the countless conversations I'd had with Daniel during his final months. He'd been my confidant, the one person I could turn to when the pressure of keeping up appearances became too much. "You're stronger than you know, Katrina," he'd told me once, his voice weak but his eyes full of warmth. "Don't let anyone dim your light." The minister's voice brought me back to the present. And now Daniel's son Alex would like to say a few words. I watched as Alex made his way to the podium. His shoulders slumped under the weight of grief. But as he began to speak, his voice grew stronger, filled with a conviction I hadn't heard in years. "My father was a kind and generous man," Alex said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "He taught me the importance of honesty, integrity, and standing up for what's right. In his final days, he made me promise to always seek the truth, even when it's painful." Our eyes met across the church, and I saw a flicker of something. Regret? Understanding? Before he looked away. As the service ended and people began to file out, I hung back, not quite ready to face the crowd. Suddenly, Alex appeared at my side, his face etched with a mix of grief and determination. "Katrina, we need to talk," he said quietly. "About Dad, about the will, about everything." Before I could respond, Linda swooped in, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "How dare you try to manipulate my son at his own father's funeral?" she spat. "Haven't you done enough damage?" I felt my temper flare. "I'm not manipulating anyone, Linda. I love Daniel too, and I have every right to be here." "Love?" Linda scoffed. "Is that why you're abandoning this family the moment things get tough? Is that why you're trying to steal what rightfully belongs to Alex through some misguided clause in Daniel's will?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" Alex stepped between us, his face pale. "Mom, stop. This isn't the time or place dash." But Linda was on a roll. "Oh, don't play innocent, Katrina. We know all about the secret meetings with Daniel, the whispered conversations. You took advantage of a dying man's kindness, and now you think you can walk away with a piece of our family's legacy." The church fell silent, all eyes on our unfolding drama. I felt a surge of anger, hot and fierce, rising within me. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt came bubbling to the surface. "You have no idea what you're talking about," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Daniel was the only one who saw me, who appreciated everything I did for this family. While you were busy criticizing and undermining me, he was there, supporting me, encouraging me to stand up for myself." I turned to Alex, whose face was a mask of confusion and hurt. "I don't know what's in Daniel's will, and I don't care. What I do know is that I'm done being the scapegoat for this family's problems. I'm done being silenced and dismissed." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out of the church, ignoring the gasps and whispers that followed me. As I stepped into the cool autumn air, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. Daniel was gone, and with him, the last tie that had kept me bound to this toxic family dynamic. As I drove away from the church, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Daniel's lawyer. "Important information regarding the will. Please come to my office as soon as possible." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was to come. Whatever Daniel had left for me, whatever secrets were about to be revealed, I knew one thing for certain. I was ready to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I arrived at the lawyer's office with my heart pounding. The receptionist ushered me into a conference room where Alex and Linda were already seated, their faces taut with tension. Mr. Goldstein, Daniel's lawyer, nodded gravely as I took my seat. "Now that we're all here," Mr. Goldstein began, "I'll read Daniel's will." As he spoke, I felt the weight of Alex and Linda's stares. The first part of the will was standard, distribution of personal effects, some charitable donations. But then Mr. Goldstein cleared his throat, and I sensed we were approaching the crux of the matter. "To my daughter-in-law, Katrina," he read, "I leave my vacation property in the mountains along with a sum of $500,000. The room erupted in chaos. Linda leapt to her feet, her face contorted with rage. "This is outrageous. She must have coerced him." Alex sat in stunned silence, his eyes darting between me and the lawyer. I felt a mix of shock and vindication washing over me. Mr. Goldstein raised his hand for silence. "There's more." Daniel left a letter explaining his decision. As he read Daniel's words, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Daniel spoke of his admiration for my dedication to the family, my tireless work ethic, and the kindness I had shown him in his final months. He acknowledged the strain I had been under and expressed his hope that this inheritance would give me the freedom to build a happier life. "You manipulative witch." Linda spat as Mr. Goldstein finished reading. "You turned Daniel against us in his weakest moments." I stood up, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I did no such thing. Daniel saw what the rest of you refused to see. That I've been killing myself trying to keep this family afloat while you buried your heads in the sand." Alex finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Katrina, how could you? We're supposed to be partners. How long have you been planning this?" "Planning?" I laughed bitterly. "Alex, I had no idea about any of this. But maybe if you had paid attention to me, to our marriage, to our finances, Daniel wouldn't have felt the need to do this." Mr. Goldstein intervened, his tone professional but firm. "I can assure you that Daniel was of sound mind when he made these decisions. He was quite clear about his reasons." Linda wasn't finished. "We'll contest this. We'll prove she unduly influenced him." "You're welcome to try," Mr. Goldstein replied calmly. "But I must warn you," Daniel anticipated this reaction. He left extensive documentation of his reasoning, including video recordings of your interactions with Katrina over the years. He was quite thorough in building his case. The blood drained from Linda's face. Alex looked like he might be sick. I stood up, suddenly feeling claustrophobic. "I need some air." As I reached the door, Alex called out, "Katrina, wait. We need to talk about this." I turned back, seeing the desperation in his eyes. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the love we once shared. But then I remembered all the times he had chosen his mother over me, all the times he had dismissed my concerns. "No, Alex," I said softly. "We're past talking. I've made my decision. I'm moving forward with the divorce." Linda's shrill voice followed me as I walked out. "You'll regret this, Katrina. We'll make sure you don't see a penny of that money." In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, my legs shaking. Daniel's final gift had given me the means to escape, but it had also unleashed a storm that threatened to engulf me. As I stood there, trying to catch my breath, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I have information about Daniel's last days that you need to know. Meet me at the Blue Crow Cafe at 7 p.m. Come alone." I stared at the message, my mind racing. Who could it be? What more secrets could possibly be lurking in the shadows of this family drama? As I left the building, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, with no idea what awaited me on the other side. But one thing was certain, there was no turning back now. The Blue Crow Cafe was nearly empty when I arrived, my nerves on edge. I scanned the dimly lit room, wondering who had sent the mysterious text. A figure in the corner booth caught my eye. It was Sarah, Daniel's nurse during his final months. "Katrina," she said softly as I slid into the seat across from her. "Thank you for coming." "What's this about, Sarah?" I asked, my voice tight with tension. She took a deep breath. "There's something you need to know about Daniel's last days. Something that could change everything." As Sarah spoke, my world tilted on its axis. She revealed that in his final weeks, Daniel had discovered the true extent of Linda's financial mismanagement. He had been devastated to learn how his wife had nearly bankrupted the family with her reckless investments and lavish spending. He wanted to make it right, Sarah explained. That's why he changed his will. He saw how hard you worked, how you tried to keep the family afloat. He wanted to give you a chance at a better life. I sat back, stunned. But why didn't he tell Alex? Sarah's eyes filled with sadness. He tried. But Alex, he couldn't accept it. He chose to believe his mother's lies rather than face the truth. As I left the cafe, my mind reeling, my phone buzzed. It was Alex. We need to talk. Now. 30 minutes later, I found myself back in our old house, facing Alex and Linda across the kitchen table. The air was thick with tension. We've been going through Dad's papers. Alex began, his voice strained. And we've found some discrepancies. Linda jumped in, her eyes flashing with anger. You've been embezzling from the family business, haven't you? That's how you've managed to keep up your little charade of being the perfect wife. I felt a surge of rage so intense it nearly took my breath away. How dare you? I hissed. After everything I've done for this family, after all the sacrifices I've made, Sacrifices? Linda scoffed. You've been living off our generosity for years. I slammed my hand on the table, making them both jump. Your generosity? I've been working 60-hour weeks trying to keep this family from financial ruin. And do you know why? Because your reckless spending and failed investments have nearly bankrupted us. Alex's face paled. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Daniel knew Alex. He found out before he died. That's why he changed his will. He wanted to give me a chance to escape the mess you two have created. Linda's face contorted with fury. You lying little . Enough! I shouted, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. I'm done being your scapegoat. I'm done sacrificing my happiness, my dreams, my very self for a family that doesn't appreciate me. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking what Daniel left me. Alex reached out, his eyes pleading. Katrina, please. We can work this out. We're family. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt the last shred of love I had for him wither away. No, Alex. We're not family. We haven't been for a long time. As I turned to leave, Linda's voice, cold and threatening, stopped me in my tracks. If you walk out that door, you'll regret it. We'll fight you every step of the way. You'll never see a penny of that inheritance. I faced her one last time, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. Bring it on, Linda. I'm not afraid of you anymore. With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I got into my car, my hands shaking, I realized I had just burned the last bridge connecting me to my old life. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with legal battles and emotional turmoil. But for the first time in years, I felt truly free. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Received notice of contest from Thompson family. This is going to be a tough fight. Are you sure you want to proceed? I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. Everything I had worked for, everything Daniel had tried to give me was at stake. But I was done being a victim. It was time to fight for my future. With steady fingers, I typed my response. Yes, let's do this. As I drove away from the house that had been my prison for so long, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. The battle of my life was just beginning, but for the first time, I was ready to face it head-on. The courtroom fell silent as the judge cleared her throat. After months of bitter legal battles, accusations, and revelations, it all came down to this moment. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, while Alex and Linda glowered from across the aisle. In the matter of Thompson versus Thompson, the judge began. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Katrina Thompson. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, so powerful it nearly brought me to my tears. The judge continued, "The will of Daniel Thompson stands as written. Furthermore, This court finds evidence of financial mismanagement by Linda Thompson. She is hereby ordered to repay the family business the sum of $1.2 million. Linda's face turned ashen. Alex looked like he might be sick, but I felt nothing but a profound sense of vindication. As we filed out of the courtroom, Alex approached me, his eyes pleading. "Katrina, please. We're ruined. Mom's broke, the business is in shambles. We need your help." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old compassion I used to have for him. But then I remembered all the times he'd chosen his mother over me, all the years of neglect and dismissal. "I'm sorry, Alex," I said, my voice firm, "but you made your choice a long time ago. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." With that, I walked away, leaving my old life behind for good. Months passed. I moved into the mountain cabin Daniel had left me, using it as a retreat to heal and rediscover myself. I threw myself into my work, building my own consulting business from the ground up. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again, stronger, more confident, and truly happy for the first time in years. It was on a crisp autumn morning, as I sat on the cabin's porch with a steaming mug of coffee, that I received the email. It was from Alex. "Katrina," it read, "I owe you an apology. A big one. I've spent the past few months in therapy, trying to understand how I let things get so bad between us. I see now how blind I was, how I let Mom manipulate me and push you away. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry for everything." I sat back, letting out a long breath. The anger and resentment I'd carried for so long seemed to dissipate, leaving behind a sense of peace I hadn't expected. As if on cue, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Michael's car pulled up, and he stepped out, his face breaking into a warm smile when he saw me. Michael had come into my life unexpectedly, a kind and supportive presence who appreciated me for who I was. With him, I never felt like I had to dim my light or shrink myself to fit someone else's expectations. "Ready for our hike?" he called out, holding up a picnic basket. I smiled, feeling a surge of joy and gratitude. "Absolutely," I replied, setting my laptop aside and standing up. As we set off down the mountain trail, hand in hand, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the struggles, the moments of despair. They had all led me to this place of strength and self-discovery. I thought of Linda and Alex, facing the consequences of their actions. I thought of Daniel, whose final act of kindness had given me the means to break free. And I thought of myself, the woman I used to be and the woman I had become. The path ahead was clear and bright, full of possibilities. For the first time in my life, I was truly free to be myself, to pursue my dreams without fear or guilt. As Michael and I reached the summit, looking out over the breathtaking vista, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. This was my life now, on my terms, filled with love, respect, and endless potential. And I was ready to embrace every moment of it. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Michael said, squeezing my hand. I turned to him, my heart full. "It really is," I replied, knowing I wasn't just talking about the view. As we sat down to our picnic, the sun warm on our faces and the future stretching out before us, I knew that this was just the beginning of a whole new chapter. And this time I was the author of my own story.